Now I want you to turn with me this morning now, please, in your Bible to the book of Job. And we're in Job chapter 3, please. The book of Job chapter 3. And it's from here where the Lord wants to speak to us. Job chapter 3, verse 1. And after this opened Job his mouth and cursed his day. Mind you, he didn't bless his day. He now curses his day. And Job spake and said, Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, There is a man-child conceived. Let that day be darkness, and let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. As for that night, let darkness seize upon it. Let it not be joined unto the days of the year, and let it not come into the number of the month. Lo, let that night be solitary. Let no joyful voice come therein. Let them curse it that curse the day, who are ready to raise up their mourning. Let the stars of the twilight thereof be dark. Let it look for light, but have none. Neither let it see the dawning of the day. Because it shut not up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hid sorrow from mine eyes. Why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Why did the knees prevent me, or why the breast that I should suck? For now should I have lain still and been quiet. I should have slept, then had I been at rest. Now come with me to verse 23. For here's my text. Why is light given to a man whose way is hid, and whom God hath hedged in? And we know that the Lord will bless those words to our hearts. Many a godly Christian, many a God-fearing Christian, many a quiet, reserved Christian, many a sound Christian, and a sincere Christian have found themselves completely flattened and have come to that place where all seems at a loss. You may say to me, well, George, should sincere, sound Christians find themselves in such a place? Can such sincere, sound Christians find themselves so low where they find themselves praying for the Lord to come, or for the Lord to even call? Can soundly saved, born again, blood-bought, heaven-bound believers find themselves so low? In such a place, everything seems a total loss. Soundly saved Christians can find themselves, child of God, in such a place. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you know the colors that are in that picture. And maybe there's some here this morning, and that's exactly where you find yourself right now. But do you know what makes matters worse? Do you know what adds fuel to the fire? When things have happened, or perhaps things are happening, what adds fuel to the fire is this: when we don't know why. Oh, there's people, and maybe you're here this morning, something has happened to you. Maybe you've lost your husband, dear. Maybe it was your wife, brother. Maybe a loved one is plunged into a terminal illness. And you've prayed, and you've read, and you've read, and you've prayed, and you've waited, but there's no answer coming to the question, why? And mind you, when we don't know why, things happen. When we don't know why God had to call our loved one home. When we don't know why our loved one has to suffer. When we don't know why, friends, I'm telling you, it's a tough call. Tough call. In 1988, the Reverend Sam Workman had a mission in Ballymagran Presbyterian Church. The minister then of that church was the late Reverend George Dixon. During that mission, Sam Workman wanted to visit a number of homes with the Reverend Dixon that were affected in the Troubles. They went to a wee house between a farmhouse. I could take you to the very spot between Ochnacloy and Corloch, or Ochnacloy and Kelleton's wee place called Corloch. And it's a farmhouse on the side of the road. It belonged to a family called the Wilsons. Their son was murdered. He was the first man to be murdered around our part of the country. The 7th of December 1971. It was a Thursday night. And Sam Workman and George Dixon went to visit Mrs. Wilson, and just to visit the home. I remember it was Sam Workman who told this story in Portadown at a mission that he was conducting there. And he said when we went to the Wilson home, the question upon Mrs. Wilson's heart was, why did God allow it to happen, Mr. Workman? You see, Dennis was in bed with a flu. And the IRA burst in, straight into the bedroom, and they murdered him as he lay in his bed. Sam Workman said, Mrs. Wilson, would you mind if me and Mr. Dixon go up to the bedroom? Will you come with us? Yes. They went up to the bedroom where it happened. Sam Workman knelt, and George Dixon knelt, and Mrs. Wilson got her to kneel beside him and to pray. Sam Workman prayed first, George Dixon prayed next. And as George Dixon prayed, the Lord brought a wee thought to Sammy Workman's heart to share with Mrs. Wilson. He took her by the hand and he said, Mrs. Wilson, when George was praying there, the Lord gave me a wee thought. It may just help you in this time. He took her by the hand, and this is what he said. Often when death has taken our loved ones, leaving our home so lonely and dreary. Then we do wonder why others prosper, living so wicked year after year. And then he said this, farther along, we'll know all about it. Farther along, we'll understand why. When we don't know why, friend, and God is silent, God seems silent to our heartbreak, you can find yourself at a very low ebb. When we come to the book of Job, friends, Job sometimes helps us in these times. In the life of Job, we have the tragedies of Job, don't we? You read Job chapter 1, verses 1 to 5. You'll read there that Job was a prosperous man. He was there a perfect man. Boys, he was a godly man. He was an upright man, a man that feared God, a man who eschewed evil, a man who was on top of the world. And if there ever was a godly man, a sincere man, a sound man, as we would describe them in the north of Ireland, I'll tell you in the book of Job, Job was the man in the Old Testament. I'll tell you if there ever was a sound man, it was Job. But Job would be the first man to tell you this morning, listen, who would stand on the words of the Apostle Paul when he said in 2 Timothy verse 3 and 12, yea, all that live godly shall what? Be wrapped in cotton wool? Far from it. All they that live godly shall be on a bed of roses. Far from it. All they that will live godly shall have a plain path. No, all they that shall live godly shall suffer persecution. Godly Christians, God-fearing Christians, sincere people, people of God, sound people of God. Listen to me, we're not exempt this morning. Job in 5 verse 7 says, man that is born unto trouble, man is born into trouble as sure as the sparks fly upward. Job chapter 14 verse 1, man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble. I'll tell you, friend, if there ever was a man that knew the tragedies of life, it was Job. The man lost his family, the man lost his farm, the man lost his flocks, the man lost his fortune, and he almost lost his freedom. And do you know what made matters worse for Job? It all seemed that the trouble came from heaven. You read Job chapter 1, and I think it's verse 16. It says there, a boy come running as hard as he could to tell Job, while he was yet speaking, there came another and said, the fire of God is fallen from heaven. It was as if all the tragedy and the trouble was a result of heaven. Now you and I know this morning it wasn't the case, but mind you, we have the book of Job before us. Job hadn't his own book to see the end of the story when everything was going wrong. And Job couldn't understand why. Why? And Job was so low, he cursed the very day he was born. Aye, he cursed the very day he was born. Why did I die not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Boys, in chapter 1, verses 1 to 5, he's on top of the world, but here the world's on top of him now. The day in chapter 1, life was so complete. To Job it was complete. Now in chapter 3, life has become a curse. Become a curse. When we don't know why, friend, and we've prayed for long enough to wonder why, life can be bitter. But you know, we have to sometimes wait till we get farther along. Thomas Dorsey left his pregnant wife Nettie at home in Chicago to go and sing at a revival meeting in St. Louis. The meeting went well. He sang well. Some people said, "Thomas, we never heard you sing as well before." And the meeting was over and everything was well and everybody was rejoicing until Thomas Dorsey received a telegram to say that his wife died in childbirth and the baby itself died 1 hour later. Thomas Dorsey cried from within his own heart, "Why, oh God, why?" To which there was no answer. He was sitting at the piano one day, and as he sat at the piano crying out, searching for an answer, why did this happen? Why was it allowed to happen? And no answer came. A wee tune came to Thomas Dorsey as he sat at the piano. And to that tune there came these words. Words of a beautiful song. So beautiful that even Jim Reeves recorded it, Elvis Presley recorded it, Johnny Cash recorded it. But they were words born out of heartbreak. Take my hand, O precious Lord. Lead me on, let me stand, for I am tired, I am weak, I am alone. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on to the light. Take my hand, precious Lord, lead me home. As I was praying much over this message, and as I was seeking the Lord for this message this morning, I says, Lord, just give me a wee thought to lift these people. Give me a wee something to say to these people this morning who are in that place when they don't know why. Give me some wee thought, Lord, to help them on their way. And the wee thought was this. There are some secrets as to the reason, and they only belong to God. And they're better left with God. God knows why. And they'll never be revealed on this side of the Jordan. When we don't know why, friends, God just simply asks you today, leave that secret with me. It will be revealed when you get to the other side. You see, there wasn't only the tragedies of Job's life, there was the temptations of Job's life, because, mind you, here's the thing. Do you see when tragedies come and trials come and tribulations come, listen, you're tempted to do one of two things. Your tragedies, your trials, your tribulations can tempt you to do two things. I'll tell you. They can tempt you either to drive you to God or drive you from God. But they can't. When we don't know why, friend, and there's no answer to why this is happening or why this happened, I'm telling you now, listen, we can all be tempted. I can be tempted as well, you know. For I'm no different from you. It can either drive you to God or drive you from God. There's a wee verse in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, you know what it says? For we know that all things work together for good to them that love God and to them that are called according to His promise. But boys, I'm telling you, when tragedy comes, it's very hard to quote that. When tragedy hits the home and something comes into our lives and our loved ones has to suffer, I'm telling you, it's hard to grasp that. Everything works together for good to them that love God, and you have to sit and watch your loved ones suffer. But you know something, child of God, this morning when we look at Job, when we understand God is in control, whatever happens and whenever it happens, you know what we learn to do, and it's only by His grace we are able to do it. We learn to trust Him. In Job chapter 1, verse 21, Job could say when all this was happening, and he says, naked came I out of my mother's womb, naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. But you know, sometimes tragedies can drive people away from God with anger. You know what Job could have done? Job could have faulted God. Do you see, when we don't know why this is happening, and when we don't know why this has happened, we can all be tempted in faulting God, laying the blame fully and solely at the feet of God. And I'm going to tell you now a wee thing now. Do you see, when you're down like this man, maybe you're here this morning and you don't know the reason why, and you are at your wit's end, or perhaps this morning you are flattened out and everything to you just seems hopeless. Listen, take this advice from me now. Be very careful who you listen to. Because I mind you, a lot of know-it-alls can come along and they know absolutely nothing because they've never been there where you are. It's hard to beat the man, it's hard to beat the woman who comes to you when you suffer, who has been there before you. You know why? Because they understand your pain. They understand your sorrow. There's one of them boys called Eliphaz, and he done three things. He was one of Job's supposed to be friends. You know the first thing he done? He flatters Job. He flatters him. Chapter 4, verse 3 and 4, you'll read that for yourself there. But then, verses 5 to 10, he flogs Job. Chapter 4, it says, but now it has come upon thee, verse 5, and thou faintest, it toucheth thee, and thou art troubled. Is not this thy fear, thy confidence, thy hope, and thy uprightness in thy ways? And he goes on ahead, on down, more or less saying, Job, something you've done has brought this upon your head. You'll always get the boy who has to lay the blame at your door. Listen, things like this don't happen unless you've done something. I want to tell you something tonight, friends, this morning, friends. Listen to me. Tragedy can happen at the godliest of homes. He accuses Job of hypocrisy. He accuses Job of weakness. He accuses Job of wickedness. And I'm telling you now, child of God, when you don't know the reason why something has happened or something is happening, just you be careful who you're listening to. A lot of boys comes across with super powerful answers and they haven't a clue. He not only could have faulted God, but he could have forsaken God. And mind you, Job was tempted to forsake God, and it came through his missus. And sometimes you can be tempted through your very kith and kin. What did Job's wife say? Listen, Job, all this has come about you and all this is happening. Listen, you know what your safe are doing? Cursing God and dying, getting over it. And sometimes, temptations to forsake God can come through your own loved one. Now listen to me. When we don't know why tragedies come, when we don't know why this has happened, when we don't know why this is happening, listen. The secret how to cope with it is just to leave it with God. Is that what you need to do this morning, child of God? It has tormented you perhaps for many years, and you don't know why this has happened or why this is happening. You know the devil will want to torment you, trying to find the answer to why, but sometimes there are these secrets that's better just left with God. Why is light given unto a man whose way is hid, whom God has hedged in? It's hard to understand, isn't it? Why a loved one died. Why a loved one suffers from cancer. Why a child is taken. When we don't know why, the case is because it's a secret. That better just stays with God. Maxwell Cornelius in the 1800s was a brick mason who suffered a terrible injury that lost at the amputation of his leg. When his leg was amputated, he was left badly maimed. But Maxwell Cornelius didn't let that beat him. He went on to be a contractor. But then his wife took ill and they moved to California. And Maxwell Cornelius built the biggest Presbyterian church in California. Almost at the construction, when everything was complete, he ran out of money. Those folk who promised to support him, their work died, and there was no money left. But Maxwell Cornelius kept funding and paid the project off himself. A year later, after all was finished, his wife died. Maxwell Cornelius preached the funeral sermon of his wife. And he ended his sermon with these words. These words became a lovely hymn that's found in my favorite hymn book. My favorite hymn book is the Sacred Songs and Sorrows. Maxwell Cornelius ended the sermon that day with these words, and these are the words of that hymn. Not now, but in the coming years. Maybe in the better land, we'll read the meaning of our tears. And then sometime we'll understand. We'll catch the broken threads again and finish what we have here began. Heaven will the mysteries explain. And then, then we'll understand. Then trust in God through all thy days. Fear not, for he doth hold thy hand. Though dark thy way, still sing and praise. Sometime, we'll understand. When we don't know why, friend, just let God hold on to the secret until then. May the Lord encourage your heart this morning to keep going and to keep ever looking.